Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into one of the most powerful and, honestly, one of the most misunderstood concepts for anyone trying to build something new, the test.
So get this, that's the founder of Groupon talking about how his company started. No fancy website, no big launch party. Their very first deal was for 2-for-1 pizzas at a restaurant literally in their own office building. And it was all run off a simple blog with coupons they made by hand.
And yet, from those incredibly humble, super janky beginnings, Groupon was on a path to become the fastest company in history to hit $1 billion in sales. $1 billion. It's just wild. So how does that even happen? Well, it absolutely shatters this myth we all have in our heads about the perfect launch. Success doesn't just spring into existence all polished and feature-packed. Nope. It comes from something way simpler, way faster, and a whole lot messier. You see, that janky blog wasn't just a cheap way to get started. It was Groupon's first critical test. It's a perfect example of what the lean startup calls a minimum viable product, or as you've probably heard, an MVP. Now, the key phrase you really gotta latch onto in this definition is validated learning. See, an MVP isn't just about building a smaller, cheaper version of your final product. Its real purpose is something else entirely.
Let's be super clear here. The main goal of your early product is not to make a ton of money or get millions of users. Its job is to test your biggest, scariest assumptions. Questions like, does anyone even want this? Or will people actually use it? You're not really launching a company. You're starting an experiment.
Okay, so how do you actually do this stuff? Well, an MVP isn't some one-size-fits-all thing. It's better to think of it like a toolkit with different tools, different strategies designed to answer different questions as fast and as cheap as you possibly can. And there are some brilliant examples of this toolkit in action. Take Dropbox. They made a simple little demo video for a product that didn't even exist yet. Their sign-up list exploded from 5,000 to 75,000 people overnight. Or Food on the Table, where the CEO literally acted as a personal concierge for his first customers, doing everything by hand just to learn exactly what they needed. And then there's Aardvark, which used what's called a Wizard of Oz MVP. They had humans hiding behind a curtain, pretending to be a super smart AI, just to see if people would even use the service. So clever.
But this whole idea, it brings up a really big, kind of uncomfortable question, especially for anyone who really takes pride in their work.
And look, that's a totally fair question. It's a real fear, right? But the thing is, it's often based on a slightly flawed idea of what quality even means to a customer, especially when they're trying something brand new.
Okay, check out this story from the 3D avatar company IMVU. Early on, they hit a huge snag. They couldn't afford to build a polished, realistic walking animation for their avatars. It was just too hard. So as this cheap workaround, they released a feature where you just click a spot and your avatar instantly teleports there. The team was pretty embarrassed, just bracing themselves for all the complaints.
But then, the exact opposite happened. I mean, they were totally shocked. Customers didn't see a flaw. They saw a superpower. They started calling it advanced and futuristic. And why? Because it solved their real problem, which was getting around the virtual world quickly, way better than some high-quality walking animation ever could have.
And this just proves it, right? Quality isn't really about polish or perfection. True quality is just about solving a real customer's problem. Because until you know who your customer actually is, you have no idea what quality even means to them. All right, so if the whole goal is to learn what your customers truly value, how do you turn that from just an idea into a clear process you can actually follow? Well, the minimum viable product is basically the engine for this really simple feedback loop. First, you identify your single biggest, riskiest assumption. Then you design the absolute fastest, cheapest experiment you can think of to test it. Then you measure what real people do, not what they say they'll do. And finally, you learn from those results. You're not launching a perfect product. You're just starting the very first spin of this experimental loop.
So at the end of the day, the question isn't, is my product ready? The real question, the one you should walk away with, is this one. How you answer it? Well, that defines your first MVP, and it defines your very first step.